We acquired the main part of the farm in 1996. The whole farm is approximately 385 acres, actually anywhere from 3 years old to 40 plus years old. I have a partner named Scott Dunn. He lets me manage the farm and do as I see fit. The objective is income first, but a big part of acquiring this farm and keeping the farm the way it is being kept is for wildlife management.
Yeah, so Edgecombe is kind of on the eastern Piedmont verge, so the far western end of the county we have more of a Piedmont topography, and the further east we go we have more of the coastal plain topography. There's about 169,000 acres of timberland here in the county. The logging industry is pretty large here. A good chunk of the farmers in the county own timberland as well, so we work with all of them on a regular basis. Private landowners owning the most of the state's timberland, if there wasn't any kind of management in place to help them or that they were doing, it would be not what you see today when you walk into a piece of property. So with Mr. Bridgers, we work with him several times throughout the year, from cost share to prescribed burning to fire line work. We have quite a bit of cost share and FDP funding every year for replanting. I think this year we had 18 tracts get funded for reseeding or either mechanical or chemical site prep work.
Well, the bottom line is it's less money out of my pocket. We've primarily utilized reforestation incentives. We've used pre-commercial thinning incentives. I value the relationship with the Forest Service. No question, probably the biggest thing that they've helped us with is putting in our fire lines. They do a good job. They've given us excellent service. I'm just fortunate to have a tract of land like this to be able to enjoy and utilize the natural resources.
This is relatively new to my family. We purchased it in 2018, and it was a new tract for us, no past experience with the property. Yeah, I've got a forestry plan in place along with a wildlife management plan. I work with the North Carolina Wildlife Commission, and primary motivation for owning the property is for recreational purposes. Wildlife management with the forestry management a close second, an important part as well. So I think the knowledge you gain from working with professionals to develop a plan is extremely important. And then secondly, once you begin to execute on the plan, having the assistance of the local forestry staff, the consulting forester, it's really a partnership of a number of different parties. And the plan sort of lays the groundwork and the roadmap, if you will, on what you need to do and when to do it. We recently applied for a prescribed burning assistance plan, and that'll be an important part of my management plan going forward. We'll be using prescribed burns on the tracts that we've thinned so that we can develop a rotational burn schedule.
Previously, SPVB was the only funding there was for prescribed burning, and that is something we do a fair bit of. So having a program that's standalone to itself for burning, I mean, that's a pretty big deal for us, because matching dollar for dollar up to 99 acres, so that would cut his costs on having to pay out of pocket for us to come in to burn it, basically in half.
I've used the local forestry service to help with burning that I have done previously, and I plan to continue this year to utilize forestry service to help with burning. So it's a really good resource and a really good partnership.
My grandfather purchased some in the late 1800s, some in the early 1900s. He bought it as a gold mine. Well, we have a consulting forester working with us, and we have drawn up a management plan where we're basically growing pine trees. We have a hunt club that deer hunts and rabbit hunts, whatever they can find to hunt. And so we're trying to manage for trees, we're trying to manage for wildlife. We're doing some prescribed burning, we're thinning the pine trees.
A little over 1,600 acre farm here is actively managed. He's got it in different different stages from recently cut to fixing to be cut, everywhere in between. He utilizes the programs the Forest Service offers with burning, insect disease, cost share. He uses a consultant forester, which is something we push pretty hard for. Nash County has approximately 183,000 acres of forest land. 179,000 acres that is owned by private landowners. If you have a written plan, that's something you can hold in your hand and look at. It provides you what to do and when, and those plans are based on your goals. So that we try to meet with you on site and write that plan to best meet what your goals are for that property.
The Forest Service has been a huge help, and the cost share to help with the herbicide and the planting and the tree buying and the whole thing helps a lot.
I'd say the biggest one is the Forest Development Program. That's our FDP. That covers a part of the cost associated with site preparation and tree planting. The second biggest one will be the Southern Pine Beetle Prevention Program. That's a $100 an acre flat rate, but that's mainly used for pre-commercial thinning.
We have been blessed here in Nash County to have the Forest Service personnel that we have had.
If you're not actively managing land for something, it's hard to pay for that. And if you have a good management plan in place and a good program for growing timber and harvesting timber, you can maintain that land for the next generation and get the resources that it provides for them.
Started cutting logs to pay the farming bills in the early 80s. Diddy and Grandpa had loans out there at Farm Credit. If it hadn't been for logging or cutting wood, they wouldn't have been able to pay for it. Our management is kind of floatable, so to speak, based on market conditions and weather conditions. If you didn't have a management plan in place on this piece of land, I don't know if we could afford to pay the taxes on it. But just from having a management plan on this place, the deferred taxes, are reduced. We're serious about keeping our land in trees and farm trees for a living instead of the way we used to farm growing row crops.
Overall management, as far as their property goes, they do a fantastic job. With a sound management plan, you'd be able to apply for a cost share, the FDP, or even get in a federal program. So you have to have a sound management plan to apply for any sort of cost share. There's over 200,000 acres in Richmond County, and it's all privately owned timberland. That's our bread and butter, that we work for the private landowners, and any question they have, it's bugs or whatever the case is, they'll call us and we'll go down there and help them out the best we can. Sometimes the landowner's not sure what they want. So we ask them key questions, and then we'll put it in a management plan, and once they read it over, they'll have a better understanding of what needs to be done.
The cost share programs are important, but more of what the Forest Service does to help us is more important than the cost share, in my opinion. In the past, we've been able to call them and help us get fire lanes in, help us do our burning.
What I value most, I suppose, would be the interaction and to learn, because a lot of these landowners, they're older. And so you get to hear war stories and stuff like this about how they used to farm this 50 years ago. Now it's in trees, or the relationships are important because that's who we work for. That's who we aim to please.
The thing I value the most is I can pick up the phone. I can pick 5 people out that I can call at any one time down there at that district, and I know them all.
I'm 5th generation here. My great-great-grandparents came here in 1850 and built the house that I grew up in. When my mom died 20 years ago, the family wanted this to continue to be a home place. Well, I own the land all around, so they talked me into buying it, so I bought it from my brothers and sisters. Kelly Douglas and Scotty Comer wrote me a management plan. And their plan even included getting rid of some invasive species, but it also included a lot of planting and clearing land.
Pretty much John's he's kind of an older school generation. The land's been in his family since the 1800s. He was tied in with several county rangers prior to me. He'll buy a piece of property, he'll kind of manage it a little bit, and then harvest that timber, and then he puts that money right back into the land. We're a high demanding forestry county, from tree planting to forest management plans down to logging inspections. We get a lot of landowners that inherited a piece of property and I have no clue what to do with it. With that forest management plan, they can take and put the land back to use instead of it staying idle, So landowners like John McCormick, I feel like they're paving the way for the generations behind us. He's paving the way for his daughter to take over. And, she's seen that work that John's put in and the dedication he's put in to make it what it is today.
I ask a lot of questions. I found that if I ask the experts, I get good answers. The Forest Service people have told me what I needed to do. They've helped me to get some financial help. Gary asked me this morning what I was going to do next. I don't know, but I'll find something to do.